calm down. Mama, I'm fine, don't worry. Go back out to sea, sail home, sweet home, where the ships must go to get all cleaned up and put away.
Hello and welcome to our Friday Live with Galt Advocacy, a very special Friday Live because it's a topic that's on everyone's mind. It's budget time again in California, and this one looks like to be kind of a bad one, and a lot of people have questions about it. But before we get into that, Caleb, how are you today?
I'm well. I am well. Thank you for asking. I'm blessed, better than I deserve. And yourself, Dakota?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a little stressful preparing for this, this past week because there's been so much information. I hope that everything we present today is going to be up to date, and there's not been any changes since then. I don't think there has been, but it's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy week. And also I want to extend to everyone else here, aside from all this craziness, all this nonsense, how are you doing today? Are you having a good day? It is, we're getting into summer. It's beautiful out. There are still good things in life, and we don't need to stress out about our topic today.
However, we're going to take it very seriously.
Yeah. But so let us know how you're doing. Leave us a like, share, subscribe, follow, whatever, for wherever you're watching, whatever you do, do the things. All right. We already have a lot of people watching because I know everybody's interested in this. So I'm not going to spend much time. We're going to jump right into it. Just so everyone knows, I'm going to go through. There are about 5 or 6 proposed changes that we're going to go over today. I'm kind of going to save in this case, the worst for last, or really the most impactful for last, to give everyone a chance to show up. But we're just going to jump into it and start talking about some of these changes. Before we do, I just want to say that all of this is still proposed changes. This is all part of the budget proposal that the governor has sent to the Senate or Congress, rather. Is that right? Congress? Yeah. To have them decide on. They're the ones that have to make adjustments, make changes, put forth their final decision, and the governor can veto it if he wants to. That's going on. So, all that to say, there's still time for this all to change. None of this is set in stone. And even at the very worst, if all of it stays the same and it gets put in place, it's still going to be several months, if not a year, before these things are actually enacted. So, take a deep breath. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about what's bad about it, because there's plenty bad about it. But it's not hopeless. It's not done yet. So
just to interrupt. When Dakota says bad, just so you know, we're not going to really go over like political views today or what's technically right or wrong with regards to like the bill in its like maybe in totality. Like ultimately, budget cuts are here for a reason, right? So there's some value as well as some things that we disagree with when it comes to the negative impacts it will have on families with special needs, right?
Yeah.
And so we can agree and disagree on certain things. However, we're just going to try and get you guys the facts, right?
Yeah. Ultimately, we understand that they have the hard job of trying to put the budget together and having it, to meet their financial needs. Our concerns are with the impact that'll have on our special needs families. That's what we're talking about today. And so, our complaints about it, our problems with it, is all related to how it impacts families. That's really the big thing. So let me start sharing my screen here, and we're going to talk about. Now, the first one, I just wanted to throw this out here. I can't really say much about it because I don't think anyone knows much about it at all. And it's this proposed reduction to the self-determination program through Regional Center. And it says that it's in there to reflect new guardrails that will protect the sustainability of the program. Now, you might be wondering, what does all that mean? I don't know. In fact, I don't think anyone knows. Now, this might be old news, but several days ago, I heard someone else talking about this, and they said that even the government, even the people that proposed this change, they themselves have not decided what these guardrails are or how exactly they're going to be implemented. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there to let you know. It could
Great
happen.
way to start. Great way to start. Throwing out guardrails. What does that mean? I don't know. Just know there's gonna be a reduction and some guardrails. All right.
Guardrails. Yeah, whatever that means, that's happening. All right. Now moving over to IHSS specific things. Oh man, I gotta figure out where I'm going with this first. Let's talk about this one first. So this is one that was okay. This was weird to me because I did not see this one coming, and it may not be that big of a deal, but I still wanted to say it. So this one, it says terminates IHSS automatically for recipients who are terminated from Medi-Cal. Now, as some of you may have experienced or may know, currently in the IHSS program, if your Medi-Cal drops, even for a very brief period of time, if you lose Medi-Cal at any point, you'll get a notice of action that says, because you've lost Medi-Cal, you're being switched from whatever program you were on to IHSS residual. And eventually, once you get put on residual for not having Medi-Cal, a social worker's going to go in and they're going to terminate your case. That's how it works right now. This change wants to make it so that as soon as you lose Medi-Cal, that notice of action that switches you to residual will just terminate you immediately. Now, when they put this forth, they said that they're also going to try and make it easier to get reinstated on the program, so this doesn't, there isn't a problem for people. And they said that you can get your hours retroactively once you get reinstated with Medi-Cal, at least within 90 days. However, I still think this could be problematic for some people. Caleb, you can probably would know that a lot of times people get dropped for Medi-Cal for no real good reason, and even if there's only like a couple of days where it's not there and then it gets reinstated, it can take weeks or even months to get your IHSS back. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all, if you've been around the world of IHSS and Medi-Cal long enough, you're going to see that, right? And so we do have a lot of people who unfortunately go through the process. Maybe they spend a year going through the whole process, appealing, and they finally get the benefit established. And then what do you know? There's a mix up with the renewal, and Medi-Cal gets dropped, like you said, for no good reason, right? Not an appropriate reason. Maybe it's a clerical error on their end. Now, thankfully, Medi-Cal does have look back periods. So in the event that something like that happens, it can be reinstated, it can get fixed, but it still causes a lot of problems and it can be a multiple month type issue before it gets resolved. And so with this proposal here of them making it even more difficult once you've been automatically, disqualified, it's kind of worrisome. I'd say it's worrisome. We don't really know exactly how it's going to affect, but I don't like it.
Yeah. The main thing for me is that, like you said, it can be problematic for some people, because if you live on IHSS, like, this is your income. This could be, what you use to pay your rent every month. And it's one thing, because when you get put on residual for losing Medi-Cal, they cap you at 195 hours. And so it's one thing if you're at 200 or 250 or 283, and you get dropped down to 195, it's rough, it's tight. That's going to be difficult for a while before you get it reinstated, but you can still probably make your rent, at least for a while. But to get dropped all the way from, the $4,000 a month you were receiving to zero, like that could be devastating for some people. And that's what worries me about this. I do just want to point out real quick, because this information we have in front of us right here, this is from the Budget Committee Assembly notes, where they explain in detail what they're doing. I would just like to quickly point you guys to how they described this the first time when they put out the summary to begin with. This is how they described it. They said they would conform the residual program with Medi-Cal coverage. What does that mean? And it says here, they're going to reduce the money to conform the residual program coverage with the timing of Medi-Cal coverage. And I was like, well, that sounds boring. That doesn't sound like anything important. And then when I see the clarification, it's, terminates IHSS automatically. That stands out a lot more. That's a lot of us. That's much stronger wording. And like, now I understand what this means, and that's a problem. So,
yeah, and I think Dakota, I think something we've uncovered a little bit is that the initial information that was received, we could call it misleading, but it is interesting how it was proposed in a way initially for it to be kind of a soft blow. And it was like, okay, well, maybe there's some room for interpretation there. And then we're like, oh yeah, by the way, here's the interpretation. And it kind of drops off the deep end with how specific it's being now. So it's really interesting how hard to describe. It's really hard to describe.
And we'll get to that when we get to the overtime hours as well. Another small one that I want to just bring up is that the state is going to try and pass the late penalty for doing reassessments late. They're going to pass the penalty onto the counties instead of the state paying the penalty. Now, this doesn't really change anything, but I wanted to bring it up because me and you, we know that some counties are in the habit of terminating people's IHSS because they can't do the reassessment on time. And I'm thinking if this passes and the counties are now liable to pay the penalty for doing late reassessments, we might get even more counties that decide to terminate people's IHSS because they can't do the reassessment.
Yeah. And this might this probably will provide some clarity for a lot of people who have been in a situation before where they get notified about an assessment coming up in 2 days, and they're like, well, hold on, little Johnny has therapy that day. I have a doctor's appointment myself. We can't make that happen. So they call their social worker, and the social worker's like, what do you mean you can't make it? Like, that's your day for your assessment. I have to get it done on that day. And you're like, well, it's not possible. You gave me 2 days notice. And they say, well, if we can't do it now on that day, we can't reschedule it because time's up. We're at your 12-month mark for the annual assessment. So if you do have to reschedule, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to terminate your benefit. Now, when people hear that, they get, automatically, they're like, oh my gosh, my benefit's gonna get terminated. We know that there's terminology here. When a benefit gets terminated, it's not necessarily closing it out entirely. But again, they're not going to tell you that. So if you don't know and understand that, then yes, you will lose your IHSS, right? And so that is the explanation that Dakota shared. That's the explanation as to why that happens. So the county, the state gets basically fined for not being able to do their assessment in a timely manner. Now, that again, that's not a you deadline. That's a they deadline, right? And so that's a they problem. And so now the burden is now going to be placed onto the county itself. I can only see that it's going to get worse. So I agree with you, Dakota. Hopefully that provides clarity, because a lot of people ask about why would they need to terminate it just because I have to reschedule it a week out from the proposed date. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Personally, I'm fine with the counties having to pay the penalty, but I think they need to be given some kind of direction or instruction or some kind of regulations that say you can't just terminate people from the program because you didn't do an assessment on time, right? Because that's what they're trying to do is basically a loophole to get around having to pay the penalty, and it's not a good way for them to work at all. All right, now we're getting into the much bigger issues, and we can come back to these. If people have questions about this, we can come back to these topics.
I have a question on it too, but we can come back to it later. Yeah,
we will come back to it. I want to get into some of these big meaty issues. I know a lot of people are worrying about this. So there are two Medi-Cal related changes. One is in relation to undocumented, or not necessarily just undocumented, but also people with certain immigration statuses are going to stop receiving Medi-Cal services. Now, this here, what I have highlighted, this is in regards to IHSS, and this is sort of goes along with the Medi-Cal change. So Medi-Cal is being frozen for people with certain immigration statuses where they're not going to be able to enroll. And then people who are already on Medi-Cal will have to start paying a premium. IHSS, going along with this, is specifically eliminating IHSS services for undocumented persons. They specify here that unlike the Medi-Cal change, the IHSS change is not a freeze. They're actually going to be removing people from the program. Now, the thing we wanted to say about the Medi-Cal thing is that it was not quite what we had expected. And we made a video a short time ago talking about that this was going to be preventing undocumented people from getting Medi-Cal. And that's part of it, but it's not quite the whole part. And we were surprised by how many people were actually included in the scope of this when we watched the assembly meeting regarding this budget change. So we wanted to play a clip that actually explained some of the other categories of immigrants who were also going to be affected by this change to Medi-Cal. So let me play that clip.
So let's start with the definition of UIS that it was pulled from CMS. Who is under UIS? Who qualifies as unsatisfactory immigration status?
Sure. So UIS, unsatisfactory immigration status, and again, this is a CMS term, really regards to how we are able to draw down federal dollars for full scope or limited scope Medi-Cal. The subcategories include qualified non-citizens, so those who have not met the 5-year bar as defined by kind of public law. So these are newly qualified immigrants or non-citizens. Those permanently residing under color of law. So this is PRUCOL, is how we often refer to, and that's also defined in federal regulations. Lawfully present individuals who are 21 or over and not pregnant. This includes those under temporary protected status, those under deferred enforced departure, those who are spouse or child of a United States citizen whose visa petition has been approved, those who have a pending application for adjustment of status, and applicants for asylum, and then undocumented individuals as well.
You said lawfully present individuals. Okay. People who have the ability to lawfully work here in California are going to get their health care stripped.
Yeah, so that was the situation that we were not aware of how many people, not only just undocumented Californians, but also people who have legal permanent residence and visas to work also will be made ineligible for Medi-Cal. So we thought that was far more expansive and overreaching than we expected, and that we would think is reasonable. So we just wanted to bring that up because it was something that was surprising to us. The other Medi-Cal change, and this will probably affect quite a lot of people, is that they are going to reinstate the asset limit for seniors and people with disabilities. And they're putting it right back to what it was, I think, 3 years ago, where in 2022, they had raised the asset limit a whole lot to, I think, 100,000, 130,000. And then last year, they had removed the asset limit. They're going to try and put it back all the way back down to its original amount of $2,000 in assets, which is, I mean, it's in today's day and age, we don't know who can live on that, right? Who has less than $2,000 in assets? I mean,
it was put there in the 1980s.
Yeah, it's been at that level for decades, almost half a century, I think. So for them to want to put it all the way back down there is really extreme. Like I said, we don't want to get too political, but we do think this is going to affect a lot of people, especially people who only a year ago were told you can start gaining assets, you can start, buying things and saving money, and now are told you got to get rid of all that if you want to keep your Medi-Cal. This is going to affect a lot of people, especially people who got on the service recently in the last couple of years. Now there is this. The asset limit doesn't include one house and one car, as we know, but it still is quite extreme, and we think at least to compromise something more middle ground. So something. Let's start with 5,000, maybe we can talk about 10 or 15. Something more reasonable. Do you have any thoughts about that, Caleb?
I'm in line with everything you just said. It's hard to I get the use and purpose of Medi-Cal. However, if we were making progress to change some of the expectations of maybe who should actually qualify for Medi-Cal, proposing budget cuts in general should increase at least some of the positive aspects of, making more people eligible who should have this, right? And so I feel like it's a little contradictory to the purpose as to why it exists, and lowering the bar way further than it needs to be. I mean, why would we be going backwards? Where, you know what I mean? It doesn't really make too much sense to me. But
and I understand that the 130,000 limit or the unlimited that it was, last year, maybe that is too expansive. It lets basically anyone onto the program. I understand if that's too much. They want it to be just for those who have limited income, limited assets, but for them to set it all the way back to what it was without some kind of middle ground just seems way too extreme to me. Yeah, so now I think we're going to get to the main topic of this whole change that I know everyone is probably wondering about. We probably have a bunch of questions about it already, but it is the provider work limit on hours. Now, I want to just point us to what they told us from the beginning. So this, what I'm showing you on the screen right now, this is the budget summary that we got 2 weeks ago, whenever it was that it came out. This is the very first statement. And here what it says is it's a reduction in general fund to an ongoing to cap IHSS provider overtime and travel hours at 50 hours per week. Now, Caleb, when me and you and John and Myra Galt and everyone else in our office heard this, what did we think this meant?
exactly what it says.
Exactly what it says, that the overtime and the travel hours would be capped at 50, that you could get 50 hours of overtime and travel hours. Now, we didn't have no reason to think this. Let me play you a clip from Governor Newsom when he announced this change. This is what he said about it.
There's certain clinic payments that are related to the undocked expansion that we cap. There's some overtime at IHSS. That's, and we'll cap it at 50 hours, which we think is reasonable, 50 hours of overtime. And there's some utilization as relates to prior authorization, some prescription drug utilization management. That represents about $200 million.
So I heard him say 50 hours of overtime. That's what I heard. That's what I understood. And so for a while, I thought maybe everyone's just freaking out for nothing. Maybe they're worried because some people gave them some misinformation, but we said 50 hours of overtime. Now, the other reason that I thought, and I think everyone else in the office thought, that must be what they meant, is because we thought surely they couldn't be crazy enough to want to limit your provider to only be able to provide 50 hours a week when the recipient can get up to 66 hours a week. Why would they do that? Right? That's what we thought. But lo and behold, we were wrong about this. I want to be completely honest about that. We were wrong. We took it as it was written and as he had said. But as it turns out, no, their plan is actually to limit providers to only be able to work 50 hours total, meaning 10 hours of overtime. So let's just jump into what they've said about that, because we have quite a lot to say about this. So as it says here, they're going to limit provider overtime and travel hours at 10 hours per week, not 50 like they said, meaning providers can work no more than 50 hours total per week. I want to point out that they say overtime and travel hours, of which 10 hours would be overtime and travel hours. Back here at the original one, it says overtime and travel hours. Interestingly, not travel hours. That actually has nothing to do with it. Let me skip ahead a little bit. And here it says, and I thought this was weird when they said it. They wrote it down here and said, it is unclear whether this proposal intends to limit travel time. Doesn't seem that unclear. It says overtime and travel hours all over the place. Well, this is where it got weird again during the budget meeting. Hold on, I'm having trouble. We have another clip to show you to clarify this issue about travel time. Let me play that as well.
We do want to note that there may have been a little bit of confusion with regards to how the proposal impacts travel time. Travel time does not count toward the overtime caps. A provider can work up to the overtime cap and still receive the full 7 hours of travel time. So we're not proposing any changes to travel.
So unlike what everything said in writing, they're actually not adding travel time into this at all. So frankly, I don't know why it was mentioned in the original proposal or the budget committee meeting, or the title of the proposal itself. I have no idea why they mentioned travel time, but again, like we were talking about, it's kind of misleading because when it says we're capping overtime and travel time, we thought that they were only talking about overtime and travel time, but actually they were talking about all time, not just overtime, except for travel time. So it made no sense at all. Anyway, moving on to what the actual effect of this is, I would like to just read some of these statements that they made, where they said the administration has stated the intent of this reduction is to not make any reductions to the recipient's authorized hours, and the budget assumes that authorized hours will continue to be paid at their historical utilization rate, which is approximately 90%. According to the LAO, I'm not actually sure what LAO is. Maybe Teresa can look that up for me, but this means that under the administrative assumptions, recipients should continue to receive the same number of service hours overall, but fewer of those hours will be worked as overtime. Now, let me ask something, Caleb. Do you think it's just going to be easy for all the recipients who get more than 215 hours a month to just find a second provider? Like, will they all just have no problem getting somebody to work the rest of those hours?
Well, can't speak for everybody, but I will say that if you care for somebody with a profound disability, coming from that place myself, growing up in a home where my home was full of not just siblings with special needs, like profound special needs, but caregivers. We had caregivers in and out of our home my entire life, right? I can count on just 2-3 fingers of how many caregivers actually stuck around, were good and helpful. And so do I think that most people will have a challenge finding providers to fulfill the hours that have been approved? I don't think I even need to answer that question. I think most people here in the comments will address and say that it's going to be next to impossible to fulfill all the, there's going to be a lot of unpaid hours if this goes through.
Absolutely. And a lot of people need in-home care, like you need an in-home provider, and you can't always find an in-home provider. And the majority of people in IHSS have a family member taking care of them. What if you don't have another family member? You're gonna have to get some stranger to do the rest of your hours. There are so many problems. And now I think it's ridiculous for them to try and say that under their assumptions, recipients will continue to get all of their service hours without any impeding to that. I think it's crazy. Because there's already a shortage of providers. People trying to find a provider to work their hours already have a hard enough time getting someone to do their hours. And that's as it is right now, where one provider to one recipient always works out just fine, where they can do the same number of hours. But now that anyone, and again, for clarity, 50 hours a week is approximately 215 hours a month. So if your authorization is over 215 hours, you have to have 2 providers to get all your service hours, or you just go without. Speaking of going without, they even acknowledge that down here where it says, anyone who's authorized for more than 50 hours of service per week will have to find a different provider to cover the remaining authorized hours. If they cannot find a new provider, they may go without care. So they know that this is something that could happen. That's just not their problem, I guess. They don't really care.
It's about to be.
Yeah.
Let's replay 1970s, 1980s.
Yeah, right. Here they gave us some details about the statistics of these things, where they said, according to CDSS, about 31% of IHS providers currently work over 50 hours. And they said during the meeting, they said that approximates to about 205,000 providers who are working over 50 hours a week. And that the providers work on average about 55 hours. Sorry, providers who work overtime work on average 55 hours a week. Now, some will be more than that, some will be less, and it's just averages. And as I mentioned, approximately 70% of IHSS recipients have a family member as their IHSS provider. Now, one thing about this whole situation that makes it so much worse, and they didn't put this in writing, but they did explain this during the meeting, is that as part of this change, they also want to get rid of Exemption 2. To explain for people who don't know, Exemption 2 is a way for a provider, if the county determines that they work for multiple recipients, and those recipients need to have this person as their provider or else they won't get adequate care, then that provider can get an exemption. to go above the 66-hour cap and instead go to 90 hours a week. Now, we thought this is what was getting capped with the original proposal, was the exemption. But no, instead, they want to limit everyone to 50 hours, including providers who have the exemption. I'm gonna take a moment to talk about that a little bit, because this exemption is only given out for people who cannot receive adequate care without having their provider providing the care. There are only 3 reasons you can get the exemption. One is that you have such severe needs and such constant, like, protective supervision, for instance, that you have to have a live-in provider, and there's no other live-in provider available. The second reason you can get the exemption is if you live in a remote area and the only provider who can come to your house to give you service, there's only the one provider in the area and they're already serving someone else and their hours will be too high, then you can get the exemption. And the third reason to get the exemption is if you don't speak English, or there's no other providers in your area who speak your language, then a provider who's working for multiple people can get the exemption because they speak your language and no other care provider does. So these are very valid, very necessary reasons that you might need a specific provider. And they're saying, sorry, even if you've been found by the county, by the state, to have one of these valid reasons, we're just going to get rid of your provider, and now you have no one to provide your hours. It is insane to me that they're trying to do this. Now, I want to take a step back and say, like we've talked about, this is just a proposal. So it is possible to change, and that's why we're here. We want to let everybody know about it so that you guys can contact your congressman, contact your senator, let them know that this is not acceptable. Let me pull up some numbers for you just to get a picture of how bad this can be for people. So this is just the numbers that we've been talking about already. The current limits are 66 hours a week for a regular provider and 90 hours a week for someone with the exemption. And they're going to take both of those and put them back to 50 hours a week. So, no doing overtime above 50 hours, no exemptions, and any recipient who has, basically every single recipient with protective supervision will need at least 2 providers. That's what they're proposing to do. And as I mentioned before, 205,000 providers currently work more than 50 hours and are going to lose hours. To put this in perspective of how bad this will be for some people, how devastating this will be, we did some little napkin math. It might not be exactly right, but we're pretty sure this is approximately correct for the situation at hand. So you see here that currently a full-time provider, as an example, might make $20 an hour. Now this is the example that we're using because it's the example that the budget committee used. They said they were calculating their estimates based on $20 an hour, so we're going to do the same. So with 40 hours of regular time, $20 an hour, and another 26 hours at time and a half, a provider currently working full-time would get $6,841.40 a month. Under the new system, where they only get 50 hours, they would get approximately $4,763. In other words, about a 30% reduction in their income every month, which is huge. Even more so, if you're someone that has the exemption, you work for multiple providers, and you're the only provider that can work for them, currently you can go up to 90 hours, which is a total of almost $10,000 a month. And under the new system, you're going down to the same number, 4,763, which is a 52% reduction in your income. Now, let me tell you, let me ask you, if you're someone who works as a professional provider full-time for multiple people, and all of a sudden your pay gets cut by 30% or 50%, how are you going to live off of that? Are you going to keep being a provider? You're going to go find another job, right? And like you were pointing out, it's hard enough finding providers as it is. So when they are suddenly making 30% less or 52% less, they're not going to want to keep working for that. If anything, what they'll need is they'll need a pay raise. And so in some, every county's gonna have to go up by $1, $2, $3 in order to keep on providers, and then we'll just be in this same situation a few years down the line. It's just not sustainable at all. It makes no sense at all. And I'm seeing a lot of people are commenting, saying things like, "Yeah, this is crazy. How could they do this to people? It's insane." So yeah, that pretty much covers everything we wanted to talk about, except now we want to talk about what can be done about it. So I'm gonna take this off the screen. So Caleb, there are a couple of things that we wanted to bring to people's attentions of ways that we want to suggest they let their voices be heard. Like we've talked about, this is the budget proposal. It's still liable to change, and the people that can change it is the senators and the assembly people. And so write to them. We have information on our website where you can find the contact information for. It's also in the comment section. So it's in the comment section and it's on our website where you can find the information for your representatives who are making these decisions. Write to them. Let them know, to be heard. We also have a petition, I believe, that we are asking people to sign to say that these Medi-Cal changes, the IHSS changes, they're going too far. They've gone too far, and we want to see, at the very least, compromise. We need something more reasonable than this, because it is not at all reasonable for people, for a provider, like a parent, to not be able to provide all of the service hours for their child. It just causes so many more problems than it fixes, right? That's what we're talking about. They're trying to save money. There's so many other ways they could go about doing it.
You said it will cause. No, it has caused. It's been a problem, which is why we had resolution, which is why Exemption 2 was created. It's why things like protective supervision were created. It's why IHSS even exists. It's because of the problem that this proposal in our mind will create again. History will repeat itself in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we don't, if the purpose of things like protective supervision and IHSS in totality is to prevent people from being out of the home, then we're once again going backwards. I mean, inflation is going up, housing costs are going up, everything's going up. And so the idea that it's just going to get easier to care for somebody with profound, special needs, this proposal doesn't seem to support that narrative.
Yeah, not at all. And I see it as causing many more problems, not just for recipients and providers, but even for the county. Because how are they going to handle another 200,000 providers needing to be hired? Now, the assembly, they said, well, they don't know how many more providers are going to be needed to cover all these hours. But let's be realistic. Most providers aren't going to want to work for more than 2 people at most. So let's be generous and say that every new provider is going to handle 2 new cases to cover those hours. That's still over 100,000 new providers that they're going to have to need to find to work all these extra hours. That's 100,000 providers going through orientation all at once, 100,000 background checks, and that's even if you could find the providers. So this is so much extra work. Now you're going to have people splitting the time over timesheets. There might be arguments. There might be hearings that have to be held to determine whether someone is going, which one of these providers was supposed to work the hours, what was their agreement, and I just see this as causing so many issues down the line that I can't even believe it. And it's why, like I said, me, you, Myra Galt, all of us, we couldn't believe that was actually what they were proposing. We're like, surely that can't possibly be what they're actually thinking to do, because it would just be so catastrophic to the program as a whole. So besides the petition, like we mentioned, when it comes to writing to your senator, writing to your assembly person, one thing I'll say is that we know they are aware that this change will affect people's income. They know that. They know that it's going to be tough, that it's going to be hard on people to make these changes. I encourage you all to, when you write to them, let them know that this will affect you. Let them know that this will be a hardship for you, but also speak to it from a very pragmatic stance, right? Tell them it causes more friction within the system to require one recipient to have multiple providers. They're causing more work for social workers. more work for the public authority, more work for the background check people, right? They could be spending a whole bunch more money on provider enrollment than they used to be. Now, maybe not more than they think they're going to save, but that aside, is it worth it to them to put in this huge sweeping change? I mean, think of the lawsuits, right? If you're someone with an exemption 2, and we encourage this, like if you're someone with exemption 2 and it looks like this is going to get put in place, be prepared to talk to an attorney about it. Maybe talk to an attorney even beforehand, because I mean, think of the lawsuit. If you're someone who you speak a language, there's only one provider in your area who speaks the same language as you, and they already are capped out at their 50 hours. And so there's no one who speaks your language who can provide your services, even though the government has said you are entitled to these benefits and you need to have a provider who speaks your language. Now they're telling you all of a sudden, overnight, just like that, you can't have a provider who speaks your same language. They are going to be sued over this, right? There's going to be civil rights lawsuits over this. So let your senator, let the governor know, look, this cannot go into place as it is. There will be lawsuits. There will be hearings on IHSS between providers. There's going to be more hassle, more logistics, more everything. This is not just a problem for recipients. This is not just a problem for providers. It's a problem for counties and the state as well. So I want to encourage you all, when you're writing this stuff, be pragmatic and let them know this is not just a hardship for the little people. You know, this is bad for everybody. I think we should get in these questions. I've been talking for way too long. And I know there's been a ton of comments talking about things. So Caleb, why don't you, if people have clarification they want to get, or any questions they have, let's get to those.
Definitely. So I'm going to start kind of from the top to bottom. I'd say, one, thank you everybody for commenting and questioning and being so patient. I know this stream is a little different than our normal streams, right? Excuse me. And thank you, Dakota, so much for being able to put all this together. Everybody, Dakota is really the one from our office, along with a couple of other counterparts, who spent many, many hours putting this together for everybody, and has educated me on kind of the news here. And so I just want to say a big thank you to Dakota and Teresa behind the scenes as well for being able to make for this to be such a informational stream today. So now we're going to go to your questions. We're going to go to your comments. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there. One big question that was asked multiple different times is when this will be implemented.
Let me take a look at the at what they said. Now, I think for each change, it varies. Some of them were planning to be implemented at the start of next year. Some were, I think, like July of next year. And I think another one of them was like January of the year after. Did I say July twice, or did I say January the first time? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, some of them are the beginning of next year, some of the beginning of the year after, and some are like in the middle of next year. They had written down here, let me find. So yeah, I don't think they said in writing when exactly the change would take place, but during the meeting, if I recall correctly, the 50-hour cap was supposed to take effect January of this next year, but I think they said it was actually going to take longer than that to put in place. So it would probably be either July of 26 or January of 27. I can't remember, because they said that about a bunch of different changes.
We have a little bit of time. I'd say in the next 5 to 7 months, it sounds like it's going to be implemented, if it does get approved. Now, when will we know for sure? Like, when is this proposal going to be given a stamp of approval, or rejected, or adjusted? What's the next step?
So just for clarity for people who don't know, right now it's the Congress that is deciding what to change, what to approve, what to reject, and they're going to make their final decision. And then it goes to the governor to approve it or to veto it. And if he vetoes it, then it goes back and they have to vote to whether to overturn the veto. In theory, it's all supposed to be done, I believe, with Okay, yeah, June 15th.
Is when the legislature has to pass it.
Yeah, I believe it's supposed to be done by June 15th. If it's not done, then they suffer some kind of penalties. But I think in the last couple of years, they have been late in getting the final one, or they were almost late. I don't recall
So
exactly.
the state fiscal year begins on July 1st, so the legislature
Okay.
has to have it back by June 15th.
So yeah, they're supposed to have it done by June 15th, finalized, so that it can start being put into place by July 1st.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. And so we did get several questions in regards to clarifying the 50 hours a month or 50 hours per week, right? So let's just quickly go over that one more time, Dakota. So in brief, to help Michelle and many others who commented, the 50 hours per week is 200 hours. What happens if you have more, right? So what did we read? If you have hours that are left over.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say is that because the month is calculated as 4.3 weeks instead of just 4 weeks, 50 hours is actually approximately 215 or 216 hours. But to your question, what happens if you have more than that? Recipients who have more than that many hours are still authorized for those hours, but they would have to have more than one provider to work that time. So you could have one provider doing 50 hours a week and then another provider doing 5 to do the rest of your hours, or another provider doing 20. Or you could split it evenly, 2 providers, both of them doing 30, if that's how they want to do it. It would be a collaborative effort between the recipient and the providers, plural, to decide who does what and how much. But realistically, that's what we're trying to say, is that it used to be a very simple, as I was saying, to me, the biggest point of failure in this whole decision is that there's no longer parity between the number of hours a recipient gets and the number of hours a provider can work, because it was always such a great, simple program. One recipient for one provider always works no matter how many hours they get. Now they're making it so that, as they themselves said, 230,000 recipients have enough hours to where this will affect them. So this is a big deal, and that is going to result in, who knows, 100, 150, 200,000 new providers that need to be hired in order for people to keep receiving the same number of hours. It's huge. So
And it could have been such a simple fix, so just reduce the overtime to 10. That's what they want to do.
Let's next question.
Yeah, so we also did get a lot of questions in regards to, actually, real quick, Eileen, and to those who were talking about hours in general being reduced. So again, to reiterate what Dakota just said, so the recipient's hours aren't going to change. It's not affecting that. It's mainly affecting how many hours a provider can work. So if your child has 250 hours a month with protect supervision, that's not going to change. You just wouldn't be able to claim all of their hours anymore. You'd have to find another provider. Okay. There was a lot of questions in regards to WPCS and if this would be incorporating hours worked for that as well.
WPCS, I don't think was specifically talked about during the budget meeting at all. And I'm pretty sure I had heard, and this is me kind of get third-party information, I'm pretty sure I'd heard someone say that WPCS was completely separate. However, the process for becoming a WPCS provider is the same as being an IHSS provider. So since this is a provider change, I think it probably actually would affect both.
I agree. And
I think, again, as a recipient of WPCS, your hours would stay the same. But since providers are currently a provider is capped at 66 hours of IHSS and WPCS combined, I think that would probably go along with this. Yeah.
And Penny Chambers Jordan here said, we have 283 hours. I'm the only provider. I usually, I'm guessing, work 11 hours a day, or you're out 11 hours a day. Can my husband be a provider? Also, my daughter is our PA. Can she also be a provider? So to my understanding, Dakota, and you can let me know if I'm wrong, but yes. So I think a very simple, quick thing you could do if this does go into place is just have your spouse, or again, an adult family member that maybe already lives in the home and already provides a lot of help. I'd say go ahead and just get them on as providers. That's a really easy, quick thing. You could, not quick, but a simple solution. If you have that available, if you have the capacity to make that happen, then yes, that would be appropriate.
One thing I'll say, this is one thing I'm not sure about, is if you're a personal assistant, there may be conflicts where you want to make sure that you don't work as a personal assistant and work as a IHSS provider at the same time. Like you may have to separate those times and just to make sure that you're not double dipping on the same work being done. But I don't know exactly about that.
Kind of a sidestep one, more big picture question. How many caseworkers are going to deny hours, challenge families, and clog up the appeal process? It's already really bad. So maybe more bad. I don't know.
I mean, what I'll say is I don't foresee most of these changes, other than maybe like the like we're talking about Medi-Cal getting terminated automatically, and counties now being responsible for the late penalties. Maybe those things could add to the number of hearing cases because counties are trying to terminate people instead of waiting to do the reassessments or something. But I don't think the hour reduction will necessarily result in more friction between the social worker and the families. More so, I think there's just going to be friction between providers who now have to decide how they're going to split the hours.
Yes, and just to address this question by Liz, so who is ultimately the decision maker here, the deciding factor? In brief, Dakota, if you want to maybe run that down one more time.
Yeah. So I mean, to your question, is it Newsom doing this? Yes and no. I mean, it is officially the proposal comes from the governor's office, but it's a whole team of people from the Department of Finance who put this together, and they work with the other departments, Health and Human Services and Development. All those departments work together on this. They present their findings to Newsom. Newsom says, "All right, this is what we're going to do," and presents that to the public, and then it goes to the Congress, the California Congress, to make the determination and make changes, approve, reject different parts of it, and then present their proposal back to Newsom, and then Newsom gets the final say to approve or veto it. So that's it's a collaborative effort between the governor and the senators, right? Senators and I don't know. I'm losing my words here. Sorry. you get the idea. It's the California government internally, the two different parts of it, going back and forth.
And where, for those who do not agree with this proposal and see the negative effects that could occur, where could they sign a petition that we've mentioned?
Well, I believe it's on our website for one. I think a link to it is also somewhere in the comment section right now. We've probably posted it on our Facebook, and I think we've also emailed it out to some of our clients as well. So any one of those places, it should stay on our website throughout this whole process. So that's one place for sure you'll be able to find it. And it's in the comments as well. So.
Yep. So comb through the comments. That's going to be the quickest and easiest way.
I'll just say, like, that's our petition that we made because we saw this issue. There may be others as well that you can sign. Let's let them hear it as much as we can, for sure.
Yeah. And there was a few comments in regards to facilities. So Barbara, no facility wants to take my son because of behaviors I've tried. The system is so broken. What a nightmare. So that is a huge need here in California. Nationwide, to be honest. And that is not, I wouldn't say facilities per se, but like out-of-home care. That's the whole point of this benefit IHSS. So like my brother, Steven, who is profoundly disabled, nonverbal, still in diapers in his 30s, he requires round-the-clock care, right? There is nothing available for him if he does not have an IHSS provider. And so, he would be cared for because he's a client of the regional center. So legally, he would have a home. So legally, if you are a client of the regional center, they would be obligated to make sure that person has a home. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a home that's a good fit for that person, right? So that's the big challenge here. And so if they want to reduce benefits, reduce the ability for a caregiver to be fairly compensated, it is going to put more people at risk of out-of-home placement. And then that's the other issue. There's not a whole lot of space. There's not a whole lot of options outside of the home right now. And so you are absolutely right, Barbara. And we really, really hope that this does not go through as it says, because that would cause a really big problem. So this was another question that I had too, Dakota, if you mind elaborating.
So yeah, this was something, and let me see if I can find. I think I was actually thinking about pulling this up because it was, I would say, poorly worded when they first announced the budget, and it was not clear at all what they were trying to say. So let me screen share for a brief moment here again. This thing, the enrollment freeze for Medi-Cal expansion adults 15 or over, which is a freeze on new enrollment for full scope coverage for individuals regardless of immigration status, age 15 and over, effective no sooner than January 1st. And there were other places elsewhere where it also said cutting Medi-Cal for people age 19 and over, IHSS termination for people age 19 and over. This was all over the place. And what wasn't clear at all when they first announced it was that they were speaking only about the Medi-Cal expansion, which is a specific thing that was put in place 1 or 2 years ago into Medi-Cal that opened it up for people with certain immigration statuses. Those group categories we were talking about earlier. So undocumented immigrants for one, but also legal permanent residents that have less than 5 years, the spouse and children of citizens that have a approved visa, asylum seekers. I don't remember all of them, but that was what was added in with the Medi-Cal expansion. And that specifically is what's being taken away for those 19 years and older.
Gotcha.
So it was very poorly worded when they announced it and not at all clear to a lot of people. And I totally get it. I was thinking the same thing when I read it. Said, wait, why does it say regardless of immigrant? They're saying they're just going to get rid of it for everybody. But no, it's under the header of Medi-Cal expansion. That's what we're talking about.
And what's the union's impact? Do we know about the chatter within the union at the moment? Because we know that the union has caused a lot of pressure on things like overtime pay, or I'm sorry, overtime hours in the past, as well as exemption to accessibility and pay rate increases, right? So does the union, do we know what the chatter is over there right now?
Well, yeah, obviously I can't speak to what's going on internally over there. I'm sure they probably are doing a lot because, I mean, this is huge, right? If we're, everybody is abuzz about this, so I'm sure that they're doing a lot. I checked maybe Monday, I think, on the SCIU website, which they're involved in a lot of this stuff. And all I really saw was them, a blog post that essentially was saying that they were very much against these changes and they thought they went way too overboard and they're going to impact families in a really negative way. But I don't know, other than that, what their plans are. I would just check their website for more information. If they've got, maybe they have a petition of their own, or speak to, if you're part of the union, maybe speak to them and see what their plans are. Because I'm not involved in that stuff.
What is going to happen to the income waiver, institutional deeming waiver with Medi-Cal? I'm sorry, with regional center, excuse me.
I have not seen anything, at least not through the budget proposals and all that. I've not seen anything that's saying that the institutional deeming waiver is going away. I don't think, I've heard a lot of people talking about the waiver. I've not seen anything saying the institutional deeming waiver is going away. However, them reinstating the Medi-Cal asset limit means it's going to matter a lot more, right? Because, even if you have the institutional deeming waiver, that means that the child who has the limitation will have their assets counted and not the family's assets. But that's only for minors. And generally, they don't have much in the way of assets, and so it means they're eligible. So I think the waiver still exists. I if someone has other information about that, let us know. But we would like to get a link to like a primary source saying that it's going away if it is, because I don't want to tell people that they're getting rid of the waiver if I haven't seen anything about that.
Yeah. And as far as what Janet said, we want to write concerns, call, and send emails to share our story. Oh boy. So I think, Dakota, you mentioned something really important too. When you're going to be writing the people, your governor, your council people, whoever you're going to be writing to in your county. You said, oh my gosh, what's the word that you said? You said to be
Pragmatic.
Pragmatic. Thank you. Right. So yes, like there's a lot of emotion that comes into play here, but something that we try to put forth is at the end of the day, they don't care about you specifically, right? Only you care about
Yeah, not you as an individual. I'm sure they have empathy and whatnot, but they are trying
Sure.
to save $1 billion, and who doesn't want to save $1 billion? And
Yes. And so like what Dakota was saying, be pragmatic in that rather than sharing your story. I mean, you obviously want to share your story, but share the kind of simple math, like some of the comments have mentioned, right? Talk about how long term here, this is not going to be a very good idea, right? Sorry, did I cut you off, Dakota?
Oh no, yeah, go ahead. But since it's been a while since we talked about it, to reiterate the more pragmatic aspects of it, the issues are that because providers, I'm just going to put this back up on the screen for a second, because providers, the ones without the exemption who are working the maximum time, they're receiving a 30% cut in their income. Ones with the exemption who are working up to the maximum of 90, they're going to be receiving a 52% cut in income. They're going to have a horrible time retaining providers. There's going to be no one to do these services. And the only way they're going to be able to keep providers on is to raise their pay. And so this is just going to be a problem that's going to come back around in the next budget year and the budget year after that. And it's not going to solve anything. And more importantly, they're going to run into more hearings, more orientations, more background checks that they have to do for all these new providers. And probably, I expect, some civil rights lawsuits for people who had the exemption are now being told you just can't have a provider, right? That's the issue those are the things that I would speak to them to say, this is a problem not just for providers and recipients, because they know it is. They know this is going to hurt you financially. But but to them, that's, got to do what you got to do, but let them know that this is bad for the program as a whole and for the counties and for the state.
And we've reiterated a couple of times. We're going to go over it another time. What if no other providers are available and you're the only person available? What does that thing say?
Let me show you what they said. Let me show you their own words. They said it right here. If they cannot find a new provider, they may go without care.
Problem solved.
Right?
Which is kind of what they're hoping for.
I mean, you might say, well, that'll save them even more money. And they might be saying that too. They might be saying that to each other for all we know. But that's the truth of it, is that they are aware that if you're in a situation where you can't find a second provider, you just might not get your services. Oh, well. So, we're trying to be honest with you here. This is why we're saying we don't want these changes to go into effect, because this is going to affect a lot of people. And for some people, there just may not be an alternative for them. Like, even for people, there is an alternative. It's still rough for the providers. They're losing a whole bunch of their income. But for some people, there's just no one to provide these services. And they just say, well, tough, you're going to have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dakota, there were a couple questions in regards to the exemption being, exempt from taxes, being a live-in provider. Have there been any adjustments to that? Because I didn't see any myself.
No, I don't think there are any changes to that. I'm pretty sure the live-in provider tax exemption is still in place. I don't think there's any change to that.
So, Laura, to address your question, yes, if aunt or cousin, friend lives with you, they would be considered a live-in provider. So they would still be exempt from taxes. You could also opt into paying taxes, even if you are live-in.
All right, I know we're kind of out of time. We went a little over time. Do we want to just quickly see if there's any really important questions that we haven't really addressed yet in this video?
Yeah, I'm kind of coming through right now to see if there's any last ones.
You check, and then I'll just say, if you missed anything, we talked about some of the smaller changes at the beginning of this video. This will be up on our Facebook page. The recording will be up on our Facebook page, and will be up on our YouTube page as well. If you need to, if you want, go ahead, absolutely, share, share this video with other people. Let me find the thing. Yep. Like it, share it for anyone else that needs this information who couldn't be here today. And you can go ahead and watch it if you missed any of the earlier comments. But we will be doing another live in Spanish in a few minutes here. We're starting a bit late on that one, but we're going to be sharing the same information and answering people's questions over there.
Don't forget we're coming to San Bernardino.
And real quick, we are having a seminar in San Bernardino June 8th. June 8th, that's a Sunday. We're also going to be there the day before for a resource fair, also in San Bernardino. And we probably will end up talking about this too, because it won't be finalized by then. But I feel like...
One quick question, Dakota.
One second. I'll get to the question last. But if things change between now and next week or the week after, we might do a follow-up video to this. We might do a part 2 to this topic. But I think if nothing changes, or if they just decide not to do things, then we'll probably just do a short video and not have to do a whole live about it. But we'll keep you posted as updates come out. All right. What questions do you have?
Asset limits. Do you want to go over that one more time? What that means?
Sure. Real quick. So they are reinstating, or they are proposing to reinstate the asset limits for seniors and people with disabilities. And they're going to put it all the way back to the amount it was before 2022. So in 2022, the asset limit was raised from $2,000 up to $130,000. And then last year, they got rid of the asset limit entirely, meaning you could have as many assets as you want and still qualify for Medi-Cal as a senior or a person with disability. This new proposal wants to put it all the way back down to its original amount of $2,000 in assets, not including a car and a house. So you basically can have pretty much nothing to your name.
It includes bank accounts, cash, property beyond your one home, one car, interest, rental income, and
including bank accounts and cash. So basically you can have no money, nothing, like you could barely have furniture. I mean, they even said that during one of the senators even pointed out, said you have a couch and a table and a TV and boom, you can't have Medi-Cal anymore. That's it. And that's kind of accurate the way they described it. So the 2,000 limit, it's been in place since the 80s. It's 50 years old now. And realistically, almost nobody actually meets that limit, it seems to me, at least. So they want to put it all the way back down there. We think even if they're going to reinstate the asset limit, that's far too low to be reasonable. Like, let's talk 10,000. Let's talk 5 or 15,000. Let's have a discussion about it, not $2,000. It's crazy. All right. Anything else?
Nothing on my end. I'd say thank you guys so much for commenting. I noticed that a lot of the comments were questions we can't really address today, in addition to questions amongst each other. So it's really awesome to see you guys connecting and conversing. But hopefully we got to some of the big common questions that I saw multiples of. And like Dakota said, if we need to do a part 2 on this, we can probably work something out. But I think that's it on my end with comments
I'm sure
and questions.
We'll be putting out more things on our website, blog posts, Facebook posts. We'll probably do a short video in the coming weeks about this. So stay tuned. I'm sure this topic is gonna stick with us for a while until it's settled. So thank you, Caleb, for monitoring this for me, since I couldn't really view the comments today. And share this with anyone you think needs to hear this stuff and needs to know about exactly what they're dealing with and what's going on with the government right now.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you, Dakota, for stepping in and running the show today and doing all the legwork to get this information for everybody who's watching today.
We'll live with Caleb next week, unless a whole bunch of stuff happens and it has to be us both again.
Yeah, we'll see, right? We'll cross our fingers. Now, is Nicole going live in Spanish today?
Yes, but as you can tell, we're probably going to start a little late.
Fair enough. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Dakota, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your weekend. And to everybody else, thank you again for the comments, the shares, the likes, the loves. Check out that petition. Again, you can find it here in the comment section. I didn't pin it, but you can find it in the comment section. You can also find it on our page. And then we might even be able to post it like in our story, Teresa, if you're listening. I don't know if you want to post like a link in our story. But it's there. Check it out. And everybody, have a wonderful weekend, despite the news. We're going to hang in there.
It's the weekend. Go to the beach. Go and enjoy yourself. Don't think about this stuff. All right.
Yes. It's proposed, and that's the word we're focusing on, proposal, right? Everybody, thank you so much again for your time. Have a wonderful Friday. We'll see you next time.
See ya.